Are you worried that medical internship recruitment is going to be disrupted in 2020? Well, there's some good news for you in this next video. So I've just finished putting the final touches on my medical internship update for 2020-21. And the good news is that despite the whole COVID-19 situation, internship around Australia is on schedule with applications being open on May the 4th. So in this video, I'm going to cover for you a number of things about the Australian internship process for 2020-21. Firstly, I'll cover the key things that you need to know about the process. I'll talk about the key dates that you need to be aware of, as well as some of the fun facts about internship in Australia, and some things that you might need to take into account with the whole COVID-19 thing. Finally, we'll round out with some of the common questions that I hear about internship in Australia. So as I said, the good news is that applications for medical internship are going to be open as scheduled on May the 4th. The whole intern recruitment process is a massive endeavour that's coordinated between the 8 states and territories with a set of common dates that are intended to ensure that the process runs smoothly. The other good news is that the Australian Medical Council, which is the authority that governs medical schools in Australia, and the Medical Board have both made some reassuring announcements in the last few weeks. Firstly, about how the current interns will be assisted to progress towards general registration this year, which is important because we have to move the current interns through to enable new interns to come in, as well as how medical schools will be allowed some flexibility to ensure that final year medical students can graduate on time and take up an internship in 2021. I'll leave a link to the document from the Medical Board below, as well as several other links to some key videos and blog posts that will help you with this whole internship application process. So for 2021, we expect around 3,600 internships to be on offer in Australia, with 50 being on offer in the Northern Territory, all the way up to New South Wales, which has well and truly pushed past the 1,000 mark with 1,039 posts on offer this year. Now, bear in mind that these are the best figures based on what is known now in April, and they're generally subject to change. Normally they might go up a little bit as the year goes on and hospitals put in additional requests for extra interns. Key dates. So the first key dates that you really need to be aware of are the 4th of May 2020, when intern applications open for all states and territories, and the 4th of June 2020, when they close. Now, you must get your application in by this date of 4th of June. There is generally no allowance for a late application in any state or territory, and it's not just a case of putting it all together on the day. Even if you're only applying to one jurisdiction, it's likely that you're going to need a couple of documents and some other things in order to complete the application. So don't leave it to the last minute. More on this a bit later. The next key date is the 13th of July 2020, which is when the first lot of offers come out, usually starting with some of the strategic internship positions such as the Aboriginal internships in New South Wales and rural internships in a number of states and territories. Towards the end of this week, the first lot of main round offers come out, by which point most of the internship positions in the system have been offered to those sitting highest on the priority list. Now, you're probably observing that the dates are aligned across the country, and there's a reason for this. The reason that the dates are aligned is that for some years now there has been an agreement amongst the states and territories and the Commonwealth Government to coordinate the internship process in order to provide a guarantee of internship for the domestic medical graduates. The aligning of the dates helps with this process and facilitates something called the National Intern Audit, which is a process that basically ensures that medical students aren't holding on to multiple offers at the same time and then delaying the whole process. So, some things that you are going to need in order to apply are as follows. Firstly, you'll need your medical intern placement number. The IPN is a unique 9-digit number which has been generated by AHPRA and has been provided to medical schools for distribution to final year medical students. The number is used as part of that national audit process I mentioned, and the IPN number is not the same number as your AHPRA registration number or your student university number. If you've not received your IPN, you should check with your medical school as you'll probably need it. Also, the majority of states and territories require you to upload an academic transcript as proof that you're indeed a medical student. They will also request evidence that you satisfactorily meet all the medical board requirements, including the English language requirements. This may seem a bit ridiculous given that you've been attending medical school in English for the last 4 or 5 years, but it is the law. So check whether you may need to submit an up-to-date English test result or some other form of documentary evidence of your natural English, such as a high school certificate. Most states and territories will also request a CV or resume for you. For tips on resumes, see the blog post in the link in the description below, as well as the video series that I've just started about medical student resumes. Some states and territories have a template for CVs that they suggest you use, or in some cases require you to use. To be honest, these templates are pretty poor in the main, and I wouldn't recommend using them if you have to. And if you're thinking about developing a resume for your future career, then now's a really good time to be designing your own resume. The risk of using a template is that you don't stand out from other candidates. You'll also need to provide things like proof of your identity, citizenship, residency or visa. And if you've had something like a name change along the way, you'll have to provide evidence about that as well. The state and territory bodies who administer the intern application process have a responsibility to ensure that you are eligible to apply for provisional registration at the end of the year in order to work as an intern. They collect all this information to check everything is in order so that you're indeed eligible to apply. Employers can get rightly annoyed when told that someone who has been given an offer is ready, but then needs to spend a few more months fixing up an English test or something like that. However, it is ultimately your responsibility to ensure that you are eligible for registration, and this continues through the rest of your career as a doctor. So you should also be checking these things yourself. Now, it's hard to fathom given the amount of communication from health departments, medical schools and student colleagues and vloggers, but every year there are a handful of medical students who do forget to apply for their internship. This means having to wait another year. Don't let that be you. There are even more students who do leave their application at the last minute only to find out that they are missing a vital document and then get a real panic trying to locate it. So here's what I suggest you do. As soon as the application page opens for each state and territory that you are going to apply to, make sure you register and then go as far through the process for applying as possible so you can see if there are some sort of documents you need to obtain or questions that you can't answer right now. It's also important to know where you sit in the priority list. Each state and territory has a slightly different order for priority, but in essence it goes something like this. If you're an Australian citizen or permanent resident and went to medical school in that state or territory, you are top of the list. If you're an Australian citizen or permanent resident and went to a medical school in another state or territory or New Zealand, you're probably second. If you're an international student who studied medicine in Australia, you are probably next. And then other applicants come in the order below that. Now, there are priorities within priorities, and some states and territories also have priority pathways to ensure their groups, such as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, and doctors who wish to work in rural or regional areas can be offered their preference placement early. So, a big tip is that if you're an international student and like the idea of working rurally, it's probably a good idea to consider a rural pathway, as it will likely boost your chances of obtaining an intern position offer earlier in the process, and then you don't have to worry. Once you have your application in, for most medical students it's a bit of a waiting game to find out an offer. But for some, in states like Victoria or Queensland, or in the case of New South Wales rural preferential recruitment process, you may be conducting a number of interviews with hospitals across a short period of time. I guess for those viewing from North America, this is as close as we get to the match system. Now, if you're one of the many students who do need to undertake an interview for your internship, the chances are that this year it's not going to happen face to face, and it's most likely to be a video interview. Now, this can be a little bit better because you're not having to travel long distances to get to different hospitals. But there is a lot more than you think to video interviewing. So for a rundown on this, check out the recent video I did about how to ace a video interview. So how do you go about deciding where you want to work as an intern? Well, there are lots of considerations when it comes to putting in your application for internship. Everyone's a bit different. Some graduates feel like they would like to be close to home and family to help with the transition. Others see it as a chance to get away and explore a new place and a location. And then others are already focusing on the long-term career prospects of certain locations. I think this last bit is a little bit overrated because, generally speaking, as an intern, you have to work in a range of terms and you're not really getting exposed to many subspecialty areas. That being said, if you do have an interest in something other than medicine, surgery or emergency medicine as a future career, you should probably investigate whether this particular specialty is offered at the hospitals or networks that you apply to. So, for example, if you're really dead set keen on doing radiology as a career, you should try to track down the very few locations that might offer this option to either interns or residents. One thing you might want to also take into account is the fact that pay rates for interns vary quite considerably across the country, with the annual salary of a New South Wales intern being only $69,000 compared to $79,000 salary annually for a Victorian intern in 2021. Also, the rates of pay for the various more senior grades of hospital doctors do vary as well as do some of the other conditions like whether you get leave for professional development or even a fund for professional development. So it's definitely worth taking this into consideration. Finally, each year the Australian Medical Student Association produces a very useful intern guide with lots of information about the composition of intern training networks across the country. We're currently waiting on the 2020 version, but I'll leave a link in the description to the 2019 version. So finally, let's round out with some of the common questions I get about internship. The first one is about special circumstances. What if I have special circumstances which might make it hard for me to work in certain places? Well, the answer is that all states and territories do have processes for considering special Circumstances. Some of the types of circumstances that are generally approved are things like where you may have certain health conditions that mean you need to be close to a certain hospital or specialist, or where you have dependents such as young children prior to school age and are unable to relocate due to care arrangements. Generally, requests to stay in certain locations for reasons such as work commitments of partners, unless that partner is a doctor and wants to work in the same place as you, or the needs of school age children are not granted. The next question is about deferring your intern offer. Is it possible to defer an intern offer? Well, the answer to this will partly depend on how long you wish to defer for. If you just wish to defer for a couple of weeks at the start of the year, it might be possible to negotiate this with your future employer. However, if you want to take the better part of a year off, then it's going to be a lot different. And you'll need to check the policy of the state or territory that has provided you an intern offer. In some cases, for example in Victoria, you will be permitted to defer and your place will be held over for you. But in most other cases, you'll need to reapply the following year. And you should check whether your priority status will alter. In most cases, it won't. Also bear in mind that it's really unclear how long you can defer commencing your internship, but the Medical Board of Australia does expect that once you start internship, that you will have completed this process within 3 years' time. So what if you're a doctor from a country outside of Australia where you've done your medical degree outside of Australia? Can you apply for an internship? Look, this is possibly the most frequent question that I'm asked on this vlog and on my blog and in my career as a career doctor. And the answer is, unless you've obtained your medical degree from a New Zealand medical school, then the short answer to this question is no. And I'd love to stop there, and I really think you should as well, but there are rare circumstances where you might just be able to obtain an internship when you have a medical degree out of Australia. But the Medical Board strongly advises against this option, and for good reasons, because the whole Australian medical internship system is designed to ensure that Australian medical graduates are given a provisional year in the system and is not designed around the needs of international graduates. There are other pathways for international graduates. So as a result of this, it is still very rare to be offered a chance, and if a certain state or territory does offer the option, you'll notice that it's the lowest on the priority list. So there's absolutely no guarantee. Some states and territories will not even consider an application from an IMG, and as I said, others will only do so in limited circumstances and as the last priority, those being the Northern Territory, South Australia and Queensland. Finally, is it possible to miss out on an internship? Look, the answer to this question is that whilst it is theoretically possible for some medical graduates to miss out on internship, i.e. the ones that aren't guaranteed, the international students who come to do medical school here in Australia, all the evidence for the last 8, 9, 10 years shows that no one has truly missed out on an internship offer if they've remained in the process for long enough. Also bear in mind that the Commonwealth has stepped in the last few years and provided additional internship positions to help with the situation around medical students from other countries completing internship. So whilst only Australian citizens and permanent residents are guaranteed an intern position under the agreement between all the state, territory and federal government, there are generally enough intern positions available for those students who have come to Australia to study here. And as I said, the additional intern positions offered by the Commonwealth tends to provide enough excess jobs for the rest. It is also clear, though, that many graduates do choose to drop out of the application process themselves. So not everyone who applies gets an offer at the end of the day. The assumption is that some graduates take up similar intern opportunities in other countries upon graduation. So there you go. There's the roundup of internship for Australia for the 2020 application year for 2021 positions. As I said, as more information comes to light, I'll be updating the related blog post on this, particularly around increases in numbers or anything that might change because of the COVID-19 situation. And if you're thinking you might need a resume or help with something like interview practice, please get in contact with me on the AdvanceMed site. We do have help for things like writing a CV or interview skills courses or indeed coaching for interviews. And I will see you in the next video.